The Galactic Council's ultimatum echoed across every screen and speaker on Earth. Humanity, the voice declared, resonant and cold. Your unregulated expansion has upset the delicate balance of the galaxy. Surrender your sovereignty, or be eradicated. Captain Mara Wells stared at the message flashing on the hollow screen of her command deck. The air in the room felt electric, heavy with tension. Around her, the bridge crews shifted uncomfortably, their expressions a mix of fear and anger. The massive flagship of the Galactic Council fleet, a silver behemoth bristling with weapons, dominated the view outside the ship's viewport. Commander Erin Stokes, her second-in-command, broke the silence. They're giving us 72 hours to surrender. That's generous for them. Generous? Mara's voice was sharp, cutting through the tension. They're giving us 3 days to decide between chains and annihilation. That's not generosity, it's arrogance. Erin leaned on the console, his brow furrowed. Our fleets are untested. Half of our systems rely on reverse-engineered alien tech. If we fight, we'll fight, Mara interrupted, her tone resolute. We've spent too long crawling out of the dirt just to kneel before some self-appointed overlords. A soft chime announced the arrival of a transmission. The hollow screen flickered, and the Galactic Council speaker materialized. Its features were unsettlingly humanoid, save for its elongated skull and eyes like black mirrors. It regarded Mara with an expression of studied disdain. Captain Wells, the speaker intoned, you command Earth's experimental fleet. I admire your courage, but courage without wisdom is folly. Accept our terms, and your people will survive under our guidance. Mara stepped forward, her gaze unyielding. Guidance? Or subjugation? Humanity doesn't need saviors. We'll take our chances. The speaker's expression didn't waver, but its voice grew colder. A defiant species is a doomed species. Consider carefully. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Mara turned to her crew. Options. Lieutenant Riya Patel, the ship's weapons specialist, spoke first. The warp disruptor might even the odds, but we've never tested it in a live scenario. If it fails, we lose, Erin finished grimly. Then it won't fail, Mara said, her voice steady. She approached the holographic display projecting the Council fleet's formation. They rely on coordinated AI systems to manage their armada. Disrupt their warp tech, and we'll scatter them. That'll buy us time. Riya hesitated. It's risky. The disruptor could destabilize local space-time. Mara met her gaze. Risk is a luxury we can afford. Surrender isn't. As her crew scrambled to prepare the disruptor, Mara allowed herself a moment of introspection. She stared out at the Council flagship, its cold elegance a stark contrast to Earth's patchwork vessels. Memories surfaced. Her family vaporized in the Council's first punitive strike against Earth years ago. That day, she'd vowed never to let humanity be cowed again. Captain, Erin called, breaking her reverie. The disruptor's charge is nearing capacity. Good, Mara replied. She squared her shoulders and addressed the crew. This is our stand. Not just for Earth, but for the right to decide our own fate. If we fail, let them remember that humanity didn't bow. The crew nodded, their fear tempered by her resolve. Erin stepped beside her, lowering his voice. You realize what happens if this backfires? She glanced at him. Yes. And I'll take that responsibility. Then let's make it count. The disruptor fired. A low, bone-deep hum vibrated through the ship as a wave of energy rippled outward. The viewport dimmed to shield the crew from the intense light. Mara held her breath as the Council fleet shimmered, their ships momentarily flickering out of formation. Alarms blared from the holoscreen as the alien ships scrambled to adapt. They're disoriented, Riya reported, her hands flying over her console. Their warp systems are offline. Target their command ships, Mara ordered. Force them to retreat. The human fleet surged forward, their ragtag ships weaving between the Council's disorganized vessels. Explosions lit the void as humanity's first coordinated strike landed blow after blow. But the celebration was short-lived. The Council flagship stabilized, its weapons charging. The speaker's voice boomed across the comms once more, laced with cold fury. You dare defy us? This is but a fraction of our strength. Surrender now, or suffer total annihilation. Mara gripped the railing, her voice calm but defiant. If this is the best you've got, you should have stayed home. The chapter ended with the Council flagship unleashing a devastating volley, its crimson beams slicing through the blackness toward the human fleet. Mara's eyes narrowed as she issued her next command. Brace for impact. And remind them why we're worth fearing. The sharp whine of proximity alarms shattered the brief silence on the bridge. The Galactic Council flagship, its sleek hull bristling with weapons, loomed through the viewport like a predator preparing to strike. Mara Wells gripped the railing, her knuckles white, as the first wave of retaliation erupted. Beams of searing energy sliced through the void, their crimson arcs illuminating the scattered human fleet. Evasive maneuvers! She barked. Bring shields to maximum! The ship jolted as a nearby blast rippled through its shields. Consoles flickered, and acrid smoke seeped from a damaged panel. Commander Aaron Stokes scrambled to stabilize the systems. Shields are holding, but we can't take much more of this. Reroute auxiliary power to forward batteries, Mara ordered. If they want to fight, we'll give them one. The disruptor had worked, scattering the Council's fleet and throwing their AI-coordinated systems into disarray. Yet the flagship, the command hub of their assault, remained unfazed, its targeting systems locking onto Mara's lead vessel with deadly precision. Captain, Lieutenant Riya Patel called out, her voice tinged with urgency. We've got multiple fighters inbound. They're adapting faster than expected. Mara's jaw tightened. She turned to the tactical holodisplay, her sharp eyes scanning the battlefield. The scattered Council ships were already regrouping, their formations tightening despite the disruptor's lingering effects. Their resilience was unsettling, yet it confirmed what Mara had suspected. The Council had underestimated humanity. Deploy interceptors, Mara said, her voice calm despite the chaos. Draw their fighters away from the fleet. Aaron shot her a sidelong glance. That'll leave us vulnerable. Not if we time it right, she replied. Trust me. As the interceptors launched, their thrusters flaring like shooting stars, Mara's flagship angled sharply to face the incoming assault. The maneuver left the vessel exposed, but it also positioned them directly in the flagship's line of fire. They're charging their primary cannon, Riya warned. Impact in 60 seconds. Mara's gaze hardened. Prepare the disruptor for a second pulse. Aaron's head snapped toward her. The first pulse nearly fried the core. A second could destabilize the entire ship. And if we don't, that cannon will obliterate us, Mara retorted. We're not dead yet, Commander. Reluctantly, Aaron nodded, his hands flying across the console. Core charging. 30 seconds to full capacity. The ship trembled under another barrage. Sparks rained from a damaged conduit, and the acrid tang of burning circuitry filled the air. Despite the chaos, Mara stood firm, her presence anchoring the crew in their shared defiance. Captain, came a new voice over the comms. It was distorted, alien, yet oddly measured. This is Dr. Vaital. You are in grave danger. The bridge fell silent, save for the hum of the disruptor charging. Mara frowned, glancing at the comms officer. Who is this? A scientist from the Galactic Council, the voice replied. Your disruptor has destabilized their Nexus AI, but the effects are temporary. If you wish to survive, you must listen to me. Aaron leaned closer to Mara, his voice low. Could be a trap. Or our only chance, Mara replied. She activated the comms. We're listening. Vaital continued, his tone urgent. The flagship's cannon is shielded by a redundant energy matrix. Your disruptor can overload it, but only if fired at full charge and timed to coincide with their next shot. Mara considered the risk. And what happens to my ship if we fire at full charge? Uncharted territory, Vaital admitted. But if you don't, you will not live to regret it. Mara turned to Aaron, who looked torn between doubt and resolve. Charge the disruptor to full. If we're going down, we're taking them with us. Core at 90%, Rhea called out. Flagship cannon firing sequence detected. 20 seconds to impact. The tension on the bridge was palpable, every second stretching into eternity. Mara's heart pounded, but her voice remained steady. Focus all power on the disruptor. Divert shields if you have to. Aaron hesitated but obeyed. Core at 100%. Ready to fire on your command. 10 seconds to impact, Rhea shouted. Mara gripped the console, her voice cutting through the chaos. Fire the disruptor! The ship shuddered violently as the disruptor unleashed its full charge. A blinding pulse of energy surged outward, its resonance distorting space itself. The flagship's cannon fired simultaneously, its beam hurtling toward Mara's vessel. For a moment, the void erupted in a cacophony of light and sound. Then silence. The disruptor's pulse struck the flagship, its shields flickering and collapsing. The massive vessel lurched, its cannon misfiring as explosions rippled across its hull. On the bridge, Mara's crew erupted in cheers. But the victory was short-lived. The strain on the disruptor had left the ship crippled, its systems failing one by one. Mara stood amidst the chaos, her resolve unshaken. Captain, Aaron said quietly, his face pale. We're dead in the water. Mara's gaze shifted to the shattered flagship, its fires illuminating the darkness. Not yet, she replied. We've just started fighting. The chapter ended as the Council's fleet, though disoriented, began to regroup, their surviving ships closing in on the human fleet's exposed position. The aftermath of the disruptor pulse lingered in the void, an eerie silence replacing the chaos. Mara Wells surveyed the bridge, now bathed in the dim glow of emergency lighting. Consoles sputtered, and a faint hum resonated from failing systems. The flagship's power core had held, barely, but the ship was a shadow of its former self. Damage report, Mara commanded, her voice firm despite the exhaustion pressing on her shoulders. Aaron Stokes sifted through the torrent of data scrolling across his console. Critical systems are offline. Shields are gone. Propulsion is at 30%. Weapons are. He hesitated, his jaw tightening. Non-existent. Life support? Mara pressed. Functional, for now. Mara nodded, absorbing the grim reality. Around her, the crew worked with a desperate urgency, their movements marked by the unspoken fear that every action might be their last. The voice of Vital crackled over the comms, breaking the tension. Captain Wells, I must commend you. Few would dare such a gambit against the Galactic Council. Spare me the compliments, Mara snapped. We're sitting ducks out here, and your advice is the only reason we aren't already dust. What's your plan? Vital's tone remained measured. Your disruptor's pulse crippled their flagship's shields, but it also exposed a flaw in their Nexus AI. If exploited, it could turn the tide of this conflict. Aaron interjected, his skepticism evident. You're saying their all-powerful AI has a weakness? Convenient timing. It is not a flaw they anticipated would matter, Vital replied. The Nexus cannot process analog signals. It is designed for precision, not chaos. Your planet's obsolete radio towers could overwhelm its decision-making processes, buying you a critical advantage. Mara's brow furrowed as she processed the suggestion. The idea was absurd, almost laughable, but desperation bred creativity. And how exactly do we weaponize 20th century tech against an empire with light years of superiority? I will guide you, Vital assured her. The nearest functional array is on Earth's surface, within range of their ground forces. You'll need to reach it and initiate a broadcast on specific frequencies. Aaron shook his head, his disbelief evident. We're crippled, outnumbered, and surrounded. Even if we could get to the array, what's stopping them from obliterating us before we can flip the switch? Courage, Vital said simply. Courage, and perhaps a touch of recklessness. Mara's lips twitched in what might have been a smile under better circumstances. Sounds like a human specialty. Plot a course to the surface. We're making this happen. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but their resolve mirrored Mara's. They had come too far to back down now. The descent to Earth was anything but graceful. With propulsion failing and no shields to stabilize the vessel, the ship's re-entry was a fiery, gut-wrenching ordeal. Mara braced against the command console as turbulence rattled the bridge. Sparks erupted from overhead conduits, and alarms screamed with relentless urgency. "Steady!" she shouted. "Divert all remaining power to atmospheric controls." Riya Patel, sweat glistening on her brow, worked furiously to keep the systems from collapsing. "We're coming in hot, Captain. Brace for impact." The ship's hull groaned as it plummeted through the atmosphere, streaking like a comet toward the surface. Finally, with a bone-jarring jolt, the ship crash-landed in a barren expanse of rock and dust, kicking up a storm of debris. Mara coughed as the acrid smell of burning metal filled the air. "Status?" Aaron winced as he pulled himself up from the floor. "We're down. Barely. Engines are toast, but we're alive." "Good enough," Mara said, her voice hoarse. She turned to the crew. "Everyone who can move, gear up. We're not done yet." The team, led by Mara, emerged into the harsh daylight, their breath fogging in the chill air. The array Veital had described loomed on the horizon, a relic of humanity's past, its rusted towers standing defiant against time. But between them and their goal stood a contingent of Council ground forces, their sleek, insected forms shimmering under the sun. "Looks like they were expecting company," Aaron muttered, shouldering a rifle. "They won't stop us," Mara said, her tone steely. "Riya, stay with the ship and coordinate with Veital. The rest of you, with me." The team advanced, their movements purposeful despite the overwhelming odds. The Council troops opened fire, their plasma bolts sizzling through the air. Mara ducked behind a rocky outcrop, adrenaline surging. Her heart pounded, but her resolve burned brighter. "Suppressive fire!" she ordered. "Keep them pinned while we move!" The battle was chaotic, the air thick with the acrid stench of burning ozone and the deafening cacophony of gunfire. Step by step, the humans pushed forward, their determination unyielding. Mara's leadership shone, her commands precise, her instincts razor-sharp. As they reached the base of the array, Mara turned to Aaron. "Hold them here. I'll activate the signal." "Alone?" he protested. "You're not invincible, Mara." "No," she replied, meeting his gaze. "But I'm responsible." She climbed the rusted ladder, the structure creaking under her weight. The sound of the battle below faded as she reached the control panel. Her fingers trembled as she input the sequence Veital had provided. The array hummed to life, its ancient machinery groaning as it powered up. A low-frequency pulse rippled outward, imperceptible to human senses but devastating to the Nexus AI. Below, the Council forces faltered, their movements erratic. Mara exhaled, her lips curving into a faint smile. "Let's see how you handle chaos." The chapter ended with the Council forces in disarray, but a shadow loomed in the distance, a new threat on the horizon. The low-frequency pulse emitted by the ancient radio array surged outward, invisible yet powerful, a wave of controlled chaos aimed directly at the Galactic Council's Nexus AI. On the battlefield below, the Council forces stumbled, their synchronized movements dissolving into frantic, disorganized chaos. Mara Wells watched from atop the array as the towering alien soldiers faltered, their precision crumbling like a shattered mirror. "Captain?" Aaron's voice crackled through the calm. "It's working!" "They're in complete disarray." Mara exhaled a shaky breath, her fingers tightening on the rusted ladder as she surveyed the scene. Smoke from plasma blasts hung in the air, mingling with the sharp metallic tang of blood and scorched earth. "Good," she replied, her tone steady. "Hold the line. We're not done yet." But her brief moment of triumph was cut short by a bone-chilling rumble that reverberated through the ground. In the distance, a new figure emerged, a towering council mech, its segmented armor gleaming under the pale sun. The behemoth moved with mechanical precision, each step causing the ground to quake. Aaron's voice returned, edged with alarm. "Mara, we've got a problem." "That's a siege-class mech?" We don't have the firepower to take it down. Mara's stomach clenched, but she forced herself to stay calm. Rhea, she called over the comm. Can the array handle another frequency adjustment? Something higher intensity? Rhea's response was laced with panic. Barely. The systems are ancient, Captain. Another overload might fry the whole array. Then it'll have to be enough, Mara replied. Patch me through to Vital. Moments later, the alien scientist's voice came through, cool and precise despite the chaos. Captain Wells, I assume you require my assistance? We've got a siege mech closing in, Mara said. Can we use the array to disrupt it? Vital paused before replying. The mech operates on a closed system, immune to most interference. However, if you amplify the pulse and target its power core, you might destabilize it. Might isn't exactly comforting, Vital. It is all I can offer, Captain. The rest depends on you. Mara gritted her teeth, her mind racing. The array's equipment was barely holding together, but she couldn't let the mech reach their position. It would wipe out her team and any chance humanity had to survive this battle. She climbed down from the array, landing with a thud beside Aaron. We're going to lure that thing into range, she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Get your best shooters ready. We'll buy the array enough time to charge the pulse. Aaron stared at her, his face pale but resolute. And if this doesn't work? Then we make sure it remembers us, she replied grimly. The mech advanced with unrelenting purpose, its massive cannons glowing as it prepared to fire. Mara and her team positioned themselves behind the remnants of a shattered wall, their weapons aimed at its vulnerable joints. Every heartbeat felt like a drumbeat in her ears. Wait for my mark, Mara whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the mech's engines. The ground shook as the mech fired, its plasma cannon obliterating a section of the wall just meters from their position. Heat scorched her face, but she didn't flinch. Now! She shouted. A barrage of gunfire erupted, aimed at the mech's leg joints and exposed servos. Sparks flew as rounds struck true, but the massive machine hardly faltered. It turned toward them, its targeting systems locking on. Captain, the array is ready, Rhea's voice crackled. But the systems are overheating. You need to give me the signal now. Mara glanced at the mech, its cannons charging for another devastating shot. Do it, Rhea. Fire the pulse. The array shuddered as the amplified pulse surged outward, the sound deep and resonant, vibrating through the very air. The mech paused mid-step, its movements jerking erratically. Sparks erupted from its joints, and its cannons misfired, sending a plasma blast into the ground. Keep firing! Mara ordered, her voice hoarse. The team unleashed another volley, targeting the mech's exposed core as it struggled to recover. With a deafening roar, the mech's power core overloaded, erupting in a fiery explosion that sent a shockwave rippling through the battlefield. Mara was thrown to the ground, the impact driving the air from her lungs. She coughed, pushing herself up as debris rained down. Captain? Aaron's voice came through, strained but alive. Are you okay? I'm still here, Mara replied, her voice shaking. She looked up to see the smoldering remains of the mech, its massive frame crumpled like a broken toy. Around it, the disoriented council forces began to retreat, their coordination shattered. Cheers erupted from her team, but Mara didn't join in. She knew this victory was only the beginning. Rhea, she said, her tone serious. Get Vital back on comms. We need to plan our next move. As the remnants of the council forces disappeared over the horizon, Mara stood amidst the wreckage, her resolve unbroken. Humanity had faced the impossible and won, but the stars still held greater challenges. She looked to the sky, her jaw set. Let them come, she muttered. We're ready.